Why do men fight over words? Why do we cling to labels like girlfriend, exclusive, serious, as if a single title decides the truth of a connection? Strange, right? Because a word doesn't make her stay. A word doesn't prove she cares. A word doesn't stop her from drifting when her heart is no longer in it. So here's the question. Are you chasing a word, or are you watching the truth of her actions? Think about it. She might say, I love you, but does she show up when you need her? She might call you my man, but does she actually invest in you? Does she make space for you in her life? Or do you feel like an option she squeezes in when she's bored? That's the trap. Men get lost in debating labels. We argue for definitions, we push for promises, we beg for reassurance, but none of that builds attraction. None of that creates respect. None of that gives you peace. In fact, it drains you. It weakens you. It makes her see you as someone desperate for security instead of someone grounded in strength. So let me ask you, do you want to spend your life policing words? Or do you want to learn how to read investment? Do you want to measure where her energy goes, where her time flows, where her effort lands? Because here's the truth, actions reveal everything, and the man who learns to see actions clearly, he stops chasing, he stops begging, he stops debating. He becomes calm, detached, free. Stay with me, because in this video, I'm not just going to show you why labels don't matter. I'm going to give you the mindset that flips the script. I'll show you how to measure investment instead, and once you do, you'll hold a quiet power, the kind of power that makes women respect you, want you, and chase you. Have you noticed something strange? The more you try to secure her with words, the more she seems to slip away. The moment you push for clarity, the air changes, her texts get shorter, her energy fades. She says she's just busy, but deep down, you feel it, she's gone colder. Why does that happen? Isn't asking for commitment supposed to bring you closer? Isn't defining the relationship supposed to give you peace? Then why does it feel like the opposite? Like the harder you push for certainty, the more uncertain things become? Maybe it's because words can be borrowed. Anyone can say, I'm serious. Anyone can say, you're my priority. But when you look closer, do her actions prove it? Does she actually plan time with you? Or are you always waiting for her to decide? Does she give energy back? Or are you the only one doing the calling, the texting, the planning? This is the problem with chasing labels. A label can be spoken in 1 second, but real investment takes days, weeks, months of effort. And men who only listen to words often end up in illusions. They feel safe for a while because she gave them a label, but soon they wake up to the reality. She doesn't actually show up in the ways that matter. And here's the painful truth. Women don't respect men who ignore reality. If you let words blind you from actions, you're not being strong, you're being needy. She feels it, she sees it, and attraction dies quietly while you're still clinging to the label you won. So let me ask you, do you want to live in the comfort of words or in the clarity of reality? Do you want to fight for labels that mean nothing, or do you want to measure the truth of her investment? Because the man who learns to measure investment, he never needs to debate, he never needs to chase reassurance. He can simply see the truth in how she shows up, and that truth gives him peace. This is where your power begins, not in debating what you are, but in watching what she actually does. Because when you measure investment, you stop begging for labels and start commanding respect. Let me tell you something most men don't want to hear. A woman can enjoy you, laugh with you, even share her bed with you, without ever planning a real future with you. Shocking? Maybe, but it's true. How many men confuse fun for commitment? How many believe that because she's around, she must be serious? Then months later, when she disappears or says, I'm not ready, they're left broken, asking themselves, But what about everything we did? Didn't that mean something? Here's the problem. Many men confuse intensity for investment. A good time is not the same as long-term value. Attention in the moment is not the same as consistency over time. A weekend together doesn't mean she's building with you. It might only mean she was bored, lonely, or just wanted the excitement. So the question is this: are you judging her by the peaks or by the pattern? Are you tricking yourself because of how good it feels in certain moments, while ignoring the fact that her energy doesn't last? Are you building castles on fireworks instead of foundations? This is why men who only look at labels or vibes end up blindsided. They fall for the high points and close their eyes to the gaps. They tell themselves stories instead of facing reality. And what happens? They overgive, they overchase. They overinvest in someone who never planned to match their effort in the first place. The real measure of a woman's seriousness is not how high the highs go, but how steady the flow is. Does she consistently create time for you, even when life is busy? Does she invest in your growth, not just in her fun? Does she want to stand beside your mission, or is she only around when the ride feels easy? This is the filter of the Stoic man. He doesn't get drunk on moments. He doesn't get blinded by labels. He looks at the full picture, the pattern of behavior. And because of that, he sees the truth before it's too late. And when you see truth, you stop being fooled, you stop clinging, you stop begging. Instead, you choose wisely, you keep your peace, and ironically, that clarity makes you more attractive than any chasing ever could. Here's a truth that might sting. You don't rise in value by talking about value. You rise by showing it. Yet how many men waste energy asking for titles, asking for reassurance, asking for some verbal guarantee? Think about it. Does a king ask his subjects if they respect him, or does he simply live in a way that demands respect? Here's the trap. Men fall into debates over labels. Are we official? Where is this going? Do you love me the same way I love you? But let me ask you, what do those words really change? If her actions don't match, if her investment isn't real, then the label is just empty noise, right? So why do so many men obsess over words instead of actions? Why do they cling to promises instead of patterns? Because it feels safe, because it calms the fear. But calm built on illusion is fragile. It breaks the moment reality shows up. Now here's the bigger problem. When you chase labels, you place her as the judge and yourself as the applicant. You hand her the power. You wait for her to approve of you, instead of observing if she's truly worthy of your time. That flips the entire frame upside down. And what happens when a man lives in that frame? He bends, he pleads, he adapts his life just to hold on, he lowers his standards, and all of that kills attraction, because no woman truly desires a man who makes her approval the center of his world. But the Stoic man, he doesn't waste his breath asking for confirmation. He studies investment. He asks, does she pour into me as I pour into her? Does she create space for me, or only take the space I give? Does she sacrifice anything, or am I the only one bending? This is where the power shift happens. When you measure investment, you stop being a beggar for love. You become the chooser. You reclaim your authority, and suddenly, the dynamic changes. She feels your weight, she feels your scarcity, and she knows this man cannot be fooled by words because he only believes in proof, and that proof is everything. Words fade, promises crack, labels mean nothing if they're not backed by effort. But consistent investment, that's the one thing that never lies. You ever notice how the ones who talk the loudest about commitment often commit the least? Strange, right? A woman might tell you she wants serious, but does she actually act serious? She might say she values honesty, but is she honest with you when it matters? This is where most men get lost. They believe the script instead of reading the play. So let me ask you, How many times have you seen a man brag about being in an exclusive relationship only to realize he's the only one putting in the effort? How many times do men accept breadcrumbs because they're hypnotized by the title girlfriend or wife, while behind closed doors they're starved of affection, respect, or intimacy? How many men fool themselves into thinking loyalty is real when loyalty has never been tested? Here's the real problem. Labels blind men. They create a false sense of security. They make him think he's safe, when in truth, he's living in risk every single day. Because the true measure of a relationship is not the name you give it, it's the weight she carries inside it. And this is where Stoic wisdom separates boys from men. A Stoic doesn't anchor himself in illusions. He asks, does she invest time without me begging? Does she show up when it's inconvenient, not just when it's fun? Does she respect my boundaries, or does she test how much disrespect I'll tolerate before I break? Think about it. If she calls you her man but never builds a life with you, what is that title worth? If she says she loves you but never sacrifices for you, what is that love worth? If she promises forever but her actions reveal only today, is that forever anything more than a fantasy? And yet, so many men are scared to face those questions, because if the answers are weak, then the relationship itself is weak. And if the relationship is weak, then his own sense of worth feels threatened. So instead of facing reality, he hides under the comfort of a label. But comfort without truth is a prison. This is why measuring investment is the ultimate freedom, because once you see clearly, you stop clinging, you stop negotiating with lies, you stop giving more than you're receiving, and in that moment, everything shifts. Suddenly, she knows she can't keep you with just promises. She feels that she has to earn you, because you're a man who measures by action, not words. And here's the deeper value most men never hear. When you live this way, you're not cold, you're not manipulative, you're free from needing reassurance every 5 minutes, free from the anxiety of wondering where you stand, free from begging for crumbs of love, because your worth no longer comes from her label, it comes from your clarity, your standard, and your unshakable presence. Have you ever wondered why some men lose women, not because they lacked money, looks, or charm, but because they made one mistake? They became predictable. Think about it. Have you noticed that the more you make yourself an open book, the quicker people stop reading you? Why is it that the same woman who once admired your silence now questions your every word? Why does her excitement fade the moment she can guess your every move? Could it be that predictability is the silent poison that kills attraction faster than rejection itself? Ask yourself, when was the last time she truly wondered about you? When was the last time she sat with her thoughts trying to figure out what was going on inside your mind? When was the last time your absence made her restless, or your presence made her pay attention because she didn't know what to expect? If every text you send follows the same pattern, if every meeting ends the same way, if every conversation becomes a repeated cycle, then how long until she gets bored? The problem is that most men confuse consistency with predictability. Yes, consistency builds trust, but predictability kills mystery, and mystery is oxygen for attraction. If she knows exactly when you'll call, exactly what you'll say, exactly how you'll respond, where's the thrill? Where's the tension? Where's the hunger? A man without mystery becomes a story already told, a movie already watched, a song already played out, and tell me who rewatches a movie every single night when they already know the ending. Now let's go deeper. Predictability doesn't just kill attraction in romance, it kills respect. Think of life like a game of chess. If your opponent can see all your moves 3 steps ahead, have you not already lost before you even touch the board? The same rule applies in relationships. If she can predict that you'll always say yes to her requests, always cancel your plans for her, always explain yourself when she's upset, then are you really in control, or are you just a pawn in her game? Here's the painful truth. Women do not leave men because of bad behavior, nearly as much as they leave them for being uninspiring. And what inspires? Uncertainty. The unknown, the challenge of discovering something not easily revealed. When she doesn't know if you'll text back in 5 minutes or 5 hours, she wonders. When she doesn't know if tonight you'll take her somewhere new or simply stay silent with a piercing look, she wonders. And when she wonders, she invests. And when she invests, she values. So let me ask you this. Have you made yourself too available, too explainable, too transparent? Have you stripped away all the mystery in hopes of making her feel safe, only to realize safety is not what fuels desire? Have you lost the art of leaving questions unanswered, the power of silence, the thrill of surprise? Or are you unknowingly becoming the man she no longer needs to chase because she already knows the script by heart? Because here's the brutal reality. Predictability doesn't just bore her, it convinces her she has nothing more to learn from you. And the moment she believes that, you are no longer rare, you are replaceable. Now I'll ask you, do you want to remain a story already told, or do you want to become a mystery worth discovering? Why is it that some men lose respect the very moment they try to prove their worth? Think about it. Have you noticed how men who constantly explain themselves, defend their choices, or beg to be understood end up looking weaker, not stronger? Why does the man who never justifies himself always seem more powerful, while the one who over-explains comes across as insecure? Could it be that the need to be understood is secretly the reason many men lose their authority, their presence, and their grip on attraction? Ask yourself this. Why do you feel the urge to justify yourself in the first place? Is it because you're afraid of being misunderstood? Is it because you don't want her to think badly of you? Or is it because deep down you don't fully trust your own choices? And here's the real sting. If you don't trust yourself, how can you expect her to trust you? If you're constantly trying to convince her of your value, aren't you indirectly admitting you don't believe it yourself? This is where most men fall into a silent trap. They turn relationships into a courtroom. Every disagreement becomes a trial, every question becomes an interrogation, and every silence becomes a demand for defense. But here's the problem. Women don't respect men who argue like lawyers for their innocence. They respect men who stand like judges, firm, calm, and unapologetic in their decisions. Now think about this carefully. When was the last time you said no without giving a long explanation? When was the last time you simply acted on what you believed without trying to persuade her to agree? When was the last time you trusted your own judgment enough to let silence speak for you? If you can't remember, then maybe you've been trading your authority for approval without even realizing it. Here's the brutal truth. Women are not drawn to men who defend themselves endlessly. They are drawn to men who embody conviction. A man who explains too much teaches her one thing, that his approval depends on hers. And once she feels that power, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer the prize, you're the applicant. You're no longer the rock, you're the negotiator. And let me ask you, how long can attraction survive when she feels she's the one granting you permission to be who you are? Look at history. The greatest leaders, the most respected figures, the men remembered centuries later, were they explainers, or were they men of few words, men who let their actions, their presence and their certainty define them? Would a king ever kneel to explain his every move? Would a general ask for validation before leading his army? Then why should you shrink your value by over-defending your life, your choices, or your truth? Here's the real problem. When you live for her understanding, you lose her respect. And when respect dies, attraction doesn't just fade, it evaporates. Because desire cannot survive without admiration. A woman may argue with a strong man, she may resist him, she may even doubt him, but she will always respect him if he stands firm. But the moment you show that her opinion is stronger than your conviction, the balance is broken. So the question is, are you standing like a man of authority, Or are you living like a defendant waiting for permission? Are you grounded in your truth, or are you trapped in the endless cycle of proving, convincing, and persuading? Have you forgotten that the strongest men are not those who need to be understood, but those who are unshaken even when they are misunderstood? Because here's the paradox: when you stop chasing her understanding, she begins to seek yours. When you stop defending yourself, she starts defending you. When you stop explaining your worth, she starts proving your value to herself. That's the invisible shift, and it only happens when you stop living for her approval and start living from your authority. Why is it that the harder some men give, the faster their value seems to disappear? Have you ever noticed that the more a man sacrifices, bends, and offers without limit, the less he is respected, and sometimes the less he is even desired? Why does the man who showers endless affection, time, and energy often end up overlooked, while the man who gives selectively, who holds back, who chooses carefully, becomes the one she can't stop thinking about? Could it be that giving without boundaries doesn't create love, but quietly kills attraction? Think about it. Why do you feel the urge to keep giving? Is it because you believe that love is earned through constant service? Is it because deep down you fear that if you stop giving, she will lose interest? Or maybe it's because you don't yet believe that your presence, your life, your aura is already enough. But here's the truth. If your giving comes from fear, it is no longer generosity. It's desperation, and desperation is never attractive. Ask yourself, have you ever noticed how gifts lose meaning when they're too frequent? How praise loses power when it's handed out without pause? How even your time, if always available, begins to feel ordinary rather than rare? If this happens with material things, why wouldn't it also happen with your energy, your love, your presence? If you're always pouring, always offering, always available, what space is left for her to miss you, to long for you, to actually value what you bring? Here's the problem. Many men mistake overgiving for strength. They think the more they sacrifice, the more they prove their devotion. But in reality, every act of giving that comes from fear teaches her one thing, that your worth depends on her approval. And once she senses that, respect begins to erode, attraction starts to wither, and what remains? A man who gave everything and lost the one thing he needed most, her desire. Let me ask you this: why do you think women chase men who give less? Why do they obsess over men who don't constantly bend, who don't always say yes, who aren't available every single moment? It's not cruelty, it's not manipulation, it's scarcity. The human mind values what is rare, what is earned, what is not endlessly supplied. A man who gives everything at once teaches her that his value is cheap. A man who gives with restraint teaches her that his value is priceless. And here lies the paradox. The man who gives less is actually valued more, because his time, his words, his affection carry weight. They are not scattered across every moment. They are chosen, they are deliberate, they are scarce, and scarcity breeds worth. But here's the bigger danger. When you give too much, you don't just lose attraction. You lose yourself. You abandon your mission. You forget your purpose. Your life becomes orbit around her, and in that orbit, your fire goes out. And when a man's fire dies, his aura fades. And when his aura fades, no amount of giving can bring back the magnetism that once made him desirable. So ask yourself honestly, are you giving because you want to, or because you fear the silence if you stop? Are you offering your time because it's meaningful, or because you're terrified of being forgotten? Are you pouring endlessly into her because you love her, or because you don't love yourself enough to know when enough is enough? Because the reality is this: true giving doesn't drain you. True giving doesn't come from fear. True giving is powerful only when it's backed by self-respect, by boundaries, by a life that already has meaning beyond her. That's when your gifts carry weight. That's when your affection becomes gold, not water. That's when your time becomes precious, not ordinary. And that's when she begins to crave it, not because you gave endlessly, but because you gave wisely. Not because you sacrificed yourself, but because you valued yourself first. That is what makes a man magnetic. That is what makes him rare. Why do some men become invisible in relationships the longer they stay? Why is it that at the beginning, their presence feels magnetic, almost mysterious, but over time, that spark fades? Why do women crave the thrill at first, then later say, "I don't feel it anymore"? Could it be that the slow death of attraction is not about looks, money, or gifts, but about predictability? Think about it. What happens when a man becomes too easy to read, too routine, too expected? At first, she was curious. Where is he? What is he thinking? What drives him? But then every move becomes obvious. Every answer becomes the same. Every day feels like a copy of the last. And what happens when mystery dies, desire fades, respect weakens, and the man who was once exciting becomes ordinary? But why do men fall into this trap? Why do they give up the very thing that made them magnetic? Is it comfort? Is it fear? Or maybe it's the belief that once you have her, you don't need to keep living with fire, purpose, and unpredictability anymore. Many men stop growing, they stop exploring, they stop building. Instead, they shrink into habits. Habits that make them reliable, yes, but also dull. Here's the problem. Reliability is important, but if it comes at the cost of mystery, it kills attraction. Women don't want a man who is chaos, but they also don't want a man who is a flat line. They want steadiness with depth, stability with surprise, strength with an edge of unknown. Without it, the relationship stops being a journey and becomes a cage. Let me ask you this. Why do you think explorers, leaders, and creators have always been admired by women? Why do men who live boldly, who step into challenges, who carry an aura of adventure, never seem to lose their pull? It's because their lives are not predictable. Their path is not boring. They remain a mystery, not by playing games, but by living in motion, by refusing to stay static, by continuing to expand, to grow, to explore new territories in themselves and in life. And here's where many men go wrong. They confuse mystery with manipulation. They think keeping a woman guessing means withholding affection, avoiding honesty, or playing toxic games. That's not mystery, that's insecurity. Real mystery doesn't come from deception. It comes from being so deeply invested in your own path, your own mission, your own growth, that she can never fully finish you. She can never fully predict you because you are always evolving, always expanding, always becoming more. Imagine this. What happens when she feels like she has all of you? Too soon, too easily. She stops chasing, she stops investing, she stops valuing. But what happens when she realizes that no matter how close she gets, there's always more to discover in you? Always a new layer of depth, always a new strength, always a new vision. Then attraction doesn't fade, it grows, it multiplies. So ask yourself, are you living in such a way that creates mystery naturally? Or are you repeating the same day, the same words, the same gestures, until nothing about you feels surprising anymore? Do you challenge yourself? Do you carry stories worth telling? Do you have pursuits that light you up, even when she isn't around? Because that is the fuel of lasting desire. The truth is this: mystery isn't about her, it's about you. It's about refusing to settle into a dull, predictable version of yourself. It's about living as a man who never stops expanding. So here we are, the final page. The question you've been holding in your chest: what's the solution? What's the truth behind all of this? Why do some men walk away from heartbreak sharper, stronger, more magnetic, while others sink into bitterness, confusion, and endless chasing? The answer is simpler than you think, but not easy to live. It comes down to this. Stop measuring love by words, labels, or constant proof. Start measuring it by investment. Think carefully. What does she do? How much does she show? Where does she put her energy? Because words are cheap, promises are cheap, labels are cheap. A woman can say, "I love you," and still give nothing. But investment is real, effort is real. What she sacrifices for you, what she chooses for you, what she prioritizes for you, that's the truth, that's the proof. But here's where most men collapse. They don't wait for proof, they don't let time reveal truth. Instead, they rush in, trying to force connection, trying to glue something together that was never solid. They give more than they should, faster than they should, and then they wonder why they feel drained, ignored, or disrespected. But here's the lesson. If you give without watching, without measuring, without discerning, you hand over your soul to someone who might not even be holding theirs. And what happens when you stop doing that? What happens when you live differently? When you slow down, when you watch, when you measure, when you invest in yourself first, in your life, in your purpose, in your peace, you begin to notice something. You start to see who is really with you and who is just with the idea of you. You see who is drawn to your energy and who is just feeding off of it. You see who matches effort and who doesn't. This is where detachment comes in, not as a trick, not as a game, but as the only way to see clearly. Detachment is freedom. Detachment is vision. Detachment is the power to say, "I will not chain myself to someone who doesn't value me. I will not give everything to someone giving nothing. I will not waste my years on someone who cannot stand beside me." You see, absence happens naturally when you live with purpose. You don't have to force it. You don't have to plan it. You don't have to sit there counting hours and saying, "I won't text her until she texts me." That's childish. Real absence is organic. It's born when you are busy building, when you are building your body, building your craft, building your legacy, building your mind. Absence happens when your life is full, when your path is alive, when your energy is tied to something greater than just her attention. And when that happens, she feels it, she senses it, she notices that your world doesn't orbit around her alone. She sees that she has to step into your world, not become the world itself. And what does that do? It sparks desire, it creates respect, it awakens attraction. Because deep down, every woman wants to be with a man who is alive in himself, not one who is gasping for her oxygen. This is the conclusion, brother. You don't need to chase, you don't need to prove, you don't need to beg for labels, you need to measure investment. You need to live in a way that makes your life magnetic on its own. You need to hold your emotions like a sword, not to cut wildly, but to carry with calm strength. You need to remain scarce, not by hiding, but by giving your energy wisely. And you need to remember that real confidence doesn't come from her approval, but from your own competence, your own mastery, your own relentless pursuit of becoming more. So what's the solution? It's already been laid out for you across every page. Detachment, purpose, emotional mastery, scarcity, confidence and presence. These are not tricks, these are not tactics, these are principles. Live daily, live deeply, lived without apology. And when you live them, when you actually breathe them, you will see the shift. She will lean in, she will invest, she will value you. And if she doesn't, then you already won, because you saved your energy for the one who will. That's the peace, that's the freedom, that's the power. And now, it's in your hands.